I want to give a huge thank you to the school community, including the lay and professional leadership of our community, for its continued support, financial, with time, and with otherwise. COVID-19 has become an existential challenge, really, for the school, and the members of the community have been incredible partners. And I finally want to give a huge thank you tomorrow, Michelle Katz, our ECE Judaic coordinator, and her Camp Shemesh team for being pioneers for us and for leading the way for protocol development and implementation. Our school is growing, thank God. We are approaching 200 students for the coming year, and we may very well exceed that number. And we have many new families part of our school community. And if you're on this call, I want to welcome you. I'm sorry we'll welcome you through Zoom, but we're happy to welcome you, and we're happy that you are decided to be part of our community, what's now your community. I want to use this time, as I said earlier, I want to use the time for people who are still coming on. I want to use the time to discuss the plan to reopen school and to address questions that you may have. Please type your questions to our marketing director, Ms. Jessica Baum, who is moderating the chat. She'll organize them, and I'll aim to answer them at the end. At the end of the evening, I'll also mention the best way to set up a Zoom meeting with me if you would like to talk further. Okay. So what we know. Tennessee generally, and Memphis in specific, is experiencing increasing numbers regarding COVID-19 positive cases and deaths. Our school community has to date been spared the effects of the pandemic and is not currently experiencing community spread. However, there have sadly been positive cases and even more sadly deaths in our community. Regular hand washing, wearing a face mask, and distancing at least 6 feet are the best ways we know to stem the spread of COVID-19. We also know that young children, under 10 specifically, are, the data shows, not as good spreaders as adults. Latest data, however, shows that older children are now considered to spread as well as adults. Where are we now? We are on the runway to opening. And I like this analogy of an airplane, and so I'm going to just go with it. We are 14 days tomorrow, 14 days until the first day of school. As you probably know, 14 days is a very significant number for COVID-19. It is the quarantine period. What we do today and over the next 14 days will directly impact the level of viral spread in our community and will impact the safety of opening school. I want to read a passage from the New England Journal of Medicine. This was just published yesterday, in fact. Any region experiencing moderate, high, or increasing levels of community transmission should do everything possible to lower transmission. The path to low transmission in other countries has included adherence to stringent community control measures, including closure of non-essential indoor work and recreational spaces. Such measures, along with universal mask wearing, must be implemented now in the United States if we are to bring case numbers down to a safe level for elementary schools to reopen this fall nationwide. As I said, this is New England Journal of Medicine, August 2, 2020. In this article, they do recommend that primary schools open safely, but it is a cautionary note that we must work to continue to lower the community transmission. And that is a very important point that we all need to be focused on. The ideal, of course, is to open and to stay open. And like a plane in mid-flight, we don't want to have to turn the plane around mid-flight. We will if we have to, but we want to open and we want to stay open. We will continue to monitor the local situation and adopt our plan accordingly. Let's talk for a minute about the protocols. We're going to talk extensively a little bit later, but I want to talk about the protocols kind of generally at this moment in an introductory sense. What they are and what they're not. The school is not a bubble. I want to say it again. The school is not a bubble. Maybe your family is a bubble. Maybe you and your neighbor are a bubble. but I've heard many cases in which one person meets a neighbor or a family member and contracts COVID-19. We have 250, thank God, Baruch Hashem, 250 people who come to the school building every day, each with their own families, lives, and habits, and they are congregating daily. The protocols are designed to protect students and faculty as much as possible, and also to reduce the need for students and faculty members to be excluded from school through exposure to a positive case. These protocols are not designed. I don't know who is, maybe that's me. I don't know what's going on. Okay, I'm gonna stop annotating. Someone's annotating. Okay, I don't know how to stop that. Okay, get rid of that maybe. Okay, clear. Well, clear all my drawings. Okay, I guess it was me, sorry. Okay. These protocols are not designed to give students and faculty members cover or license to engage in virus-spreading behavior outside of school. One has nothing to do with the other. Regular hand washing, mask wearing, and social distancing will stem this virus, and the protocols within the school, as we'll talk about, will serve to protect us as much as we can, as much as is possible. And I think, as we'll talk, I think quite effectively, we hope, in stemming the virus in school. There's work that needs to be done outside of the school, which the work inside the school will not protect against. Let's talk about healthy culture and community. I want to share with you, and I'm going to share with you a couple vignettes tonight, but one vignette came to my attention actually yesterday. I don't know if it's true, but it came to my attention. I have reason to think it's plausible. Understand that there is potentially out there a behavior of licking one's hand and giving high fives. I don't know if you've heard about this or seen this yourself. Maybe it's amongst the teenagers, maybe even it's amongst the adults. But I want to share with you, this is an indication that I think that peer pressure now may be building, that distancing and concern for spread is even being mocked. Each of us has our own risks, our own risk tolerance, our own fears, and our own anxieties. And we need to work to be the best that we can be. Parents and kids need to be respectful of each other and respectful of each other's boundaries. And I ask you, I implore you, please create in yourself and in your families that level of sensitivity. Wear masks and distance when you're near others. You have no idea what other people's needs are, and simply asking them if they mind may not be enough. Maybe they just don't want to put you out, and they feel bad about asking you to put on a mask. Please be thoughtful, please be kind, don't ask. Just wear a mask and just distance. That is the best way that we know of to continue to stem the tide of COVID-19. Okay, buckle up. I want to talk about another specific example that came to my attention. This was yesterday. I understand that yesterday there was a full-on football game in full public view this past Shabbat involving many unmasked, non-socially distanced teenagers. We are aware of other get-togethers too, without masking and without social distancing. But talk straight, this is reckless. It's like driving a car and not wearing a seatbelt and then saying that I won't get into an accident, and even if I do get into an accident, it won't be so bad. Please buckle up. I'm appealing to you, please. Our kids are making decisions based on the standards that we set, that we enforce, that we discuss with our own peers, and those which we ourselves keep to. I know that working with our kids at this time is very, very difficult, especially working with our youngest kids. Please don't give up. We have made so much progress. Thank God we've been spared from COVID-19, the ravages of it within our own community to date, and we need to stay on the path. Please, I'm appealing to you, please do all that you can. Wear masks, continue to distance, set that example for yourself, and please enforce it with your children. Okay, so finally, doing our part. We all want school to open. That's why we're on the call tonight. We all know that I hope we know, it's a priority for the community. It's a priority, number one priority for our kids. Our kids need a Jewish education. Our kids need a great general education. Our kids need to be educated. They need the structure of school. They need the mentoring of their teachers. They need the environment that we only have special here in our school. We need to open school. We've been advised that one very important factor that we must consider in opening or remaining virtual is the level of community spread. So please do all that you can do to prevent community spread. When you see your friends, put on a mask and distance. When you go to shul, put on a mask and distance. When you go to someone's house, put on a mask and distance. Please expect this from our kids and do this yourselves. And finally, in our introductory points, please deeply consider your needs and also consider your other family's needs as well. You need school to open, and they may really need school to open. You may have a grandparent who's compromised, and you'll be careful. They may be even more compromised than you are and do not have the luxury of distancing at home, and they need these precautions even more. Please do your part. If everyone will redouble our efforts to do our part, we will, at the right time, please God, August 19th, be able to open school, and we'll be able to have a successful open to school and a continuing of school remaining open in a safe way. Okay. I want to now talk more specifically, if I can get this to move forward. There we go. Okay. So in planning for our schools reopening, we're balancing three objectives. One is physical safety, two is educational growth, and third is emotional health and well-being. I'm not going to read these here. These are directly from our document that we put out publishing our protocols. But again, these are our three guiding objectives. Again, physical safety, educational growth, and emotional health and well-being. Foundation in our plan regarding that's built really on to accomplish these three aims is built on three foundations. And I want to talk about each one of these foundations more in depth with you. So the first foundation is, in order to mitigate risks to health and safety, MHAFYOS has created and will continue to update protocols and plans to respond to the latest guidance and the current level of viral transmission in the community. Okay. So I want to talk here a lot actually, about the process that we were involved in to come to the protocols that we created and published. And I want to talk just briefly about the product, and then we'll expand on the product in a little bit. We began this process by developing protocols for Camp Shemesh, and we began this process approximately June 15th. We had an initial consult, and we had follow-up with Dr. Aaron Glatt, who's the chief of infectious disease at Mount Sinai Hospital in South Nassau, New York. We consulted CDC guidelines. We used another camp as a rough draft. Michelle, Katie Minner, and I developed protocols that were consistent with the guidelines that we have learned and that we felt that we could uphold. And some of the aspects of camp were even dropped because they were out of sync with the protocols. We communicated with each of the local rabbis. We gave an opportunity for review, and we consulted at that time with medical advisors. We ran over 4 weeks of Camp Shemesh, and thank God, we learned a lot. We excluded some campers and some faculty members along the way based on our protocols, but thank God it was a very safe camp, and thank God we learned a great deal about implementing protocols, what works better, and how to implement these protocols for the coming school year. We then began developing our protocols for the school year, for MHAFYOS, and we began that as well in June. The reopening team, many of the members are on the call tonight. We meet regularly. We used Camp Shemesh as a rough draft. We communicated with local Memphis Association of Independent Schools. We had guidance from the CDC, from the American Association of Pediatrics, from the Le Bonheur President's Circle. We had intensive consultation with Dr. Sandy Arnold, who's the infectious disease pediatrician and chair of this committee for COVID at Le Bonheur. We had guidance from the Shelby County Department of Health. We met with the school community. This was at the end of June to discuss basic information. We considered other school reopening protocols, both in and out of Memphis. We wrote overall protocols, and we began to write and continue to write divisional standards. We had consultation with medical advisors, with our local rabbinic oversight committee. We presented the protocols to teachers for their review and feedback, and then we presented the protocols to the school community. That was last week. We continue to consult with medical advisors regularly, our rabbinic oversight committee, and we continue to watch the local situation. In terms of a product, we intend to begin the school year with all our students on campus. However, depending on changing guidance and the changing level of community spread, we will consider, and we may consider, we will consider different formats for different grades potentially, again, depending on changing guidance and changing level of community spread. We have produced protocols, and these have been sent out, and you can access these protocols on our webpage, mhafyos.org, over on the right-hand side. That's foundation number one. Foundation number two, enforcing mandatory on-campus safeguards to promote the health of our students, faculty, staff, and their families. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, we published this protocol document. I have a link to it, but I really don't think it's necessary to put it up. But as I said, mhafyos.org. It's on the right-hand side. You click through, and the protocol document is available for you to peruse. It has many specifics, and it's being updated as need be. Okay. I want to talk about the basic aspects to these protocols. And again, I'm not going to go detail by detail. They are listed there, but I will speak with some specificity so that you can understand, and also some things that were not necessarily included when we originally published the document. Okay, health screenings. So each person who enters the building must be screened, will be screened for COVID-19 related issues. This includes temperature check, and this also includes a series of questions to identify, has there been some exposure, which is important for us to know, relative to COVID-19. That'll happen each day, every day. Of course, it'll require more staff members to be involved in the welcome process for carpools. It will involve more staff members involved at the high schools to engage this process. But we have a process in place that will be a screening that we feel will work. And we've been, not just feel, this is but what's been we've been guided by again CDC, all those guidance we talked about before, CDC and local health experts in infectious disease. Illness and prevention. Students and faculty who exhibit symptoms of illness must stay home. This is if a student has a fever 100 degrees or more, so such a student should stay home. And any type of sign of illness that is related to COVID, of course, lack of taste or smell, any sort of shortness of breath, these kind of symptoms that are related to any kind of pervasive cough or dry cough. And this is not an exhaustive list, but these are any kind of illness and any kind of illness. So those students and faculty members must stay home. We'll talk a little bit more at the end related to what do we do when illness comes up in the community. Face coverings. So faculty will wear face coverings at all times in the presence of other people, and students in all grades will also wear face coverings at all times except during supervised breaks and meals. Supervised distance resource outdoors will not require masks, but they will be monitored, and they will be scheduled in cohorts. So we'll talk about resources a little bit more in a minute. Students under 10 years old, where we talked about before that there's less risk of them being able to spread, So if they have a documented medical exemption, so they will not have to wear a mask when exempted. And face coverings must be of a double layer type or something similar to that, which will provide that type of coverage. A face shield may be worn in conjunction with a mask, but it does not replace a mask. And clear masks with an ASTM level rating of 3 also is acceptable. And in fact, we are going to be using those kind of clear face masks, particularly in the lower grades when we're teaching things and elements which require either emotion or they require seeing the mouth move or seeing the students' mouths move. These kinds of things will be engaging those plastic masks. Okay. Hand washing and personal sanitation. We have over 50 hand sanitizing stations that will be placed throughout the school, and hand washing and or hand sanitizing schedules will be followed in all classrooms. We have increased cleaning and sanitation procedures during and after school hours. We've hired an extra person who will be here dedicated to sanitizing those areas that are common spaces, either common bathrooms, common handles, these kinds of things. And as well, cleaning will be done within the rooms whenever students move from one class to another, if that happens, particularly in the high school, for example. So the classrooms will be cleaned, the desks will be cleaned, all spaces will be cleaned like that as they move from classroom to classroom. Okay. In the lower classes, moving from classroom is not really relevant. The students stay in the same classroom generally. Okay. Social distancing, controlling the viral spread. And I want to talk actually pretty extensively about social distancing. There are a number of elements under this point. Okay. We've reconfigured the classrooms to allow for 6 feet of distancing and restricted use of common areas. We have split our pre-K 4 into 2 groups, and they'll be in 2 separate classrooms, each one smaller, and so there'll be more space. The idea there is just less density and more space per child. Our largest grades also will have much more space relative to last year. Particularly our largest classrooms, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and 6th grade, they will be moved into significantly larger classrooms. These larger classrooms will allow classes to split into smaller groups within the classroom as appropriate, and they will still be allowed to be distanced even within those larger classrooms. So for example, for our 3rd grade and 4th grade, we've actually created one classroom out of 2 classrooms. So really, really large, and those are our 2 largest grades. And we also are repurposing the lunchroom to be able to serve as 2 classrooms, so that, and it's just much larger than the existing classrooms that we have. So we've really been able to expand for our largest groups, make sure they have plenty of space. And the other groups also have large classrooms that will definitely allow for social distancing, which means 6 feet of space for each student and plenty of room to move around. Okay. All classes, also including the high school, will have 6 feet of distancing within all classrooms. We will explore the use of microphones when feasible and when necessary. Distancing will be maintained during tefillah, and tefillah will only be conducted within one grouping, within one cohort. And finally, under this heading, physical activities like recess and PE will be held. They'll be supervised and held in cohorts with distancing. Games that can be consistent with social distancing, like kickball, like frisbee, those things can be played. Basketball games will not be permitted, but shooting basketball would be permitted. But of course, all of this is dependent on students' cooperation with distancing, with masking as necessary, etc. So all this is really critical that that students buy into and comport themselves according to these protocols so we can maintain safety. We have revamped our meal procedures. So I'm moving down to the next issue, which is serving and eating meals safely. Okay, we've revamped our eating procedures. ECE through 8th grade, they'll have lunch in their classrooms. Hot lunch will be delivered. The high school boys will line up at 6-foot increments and sit at distance tables in the gymnasium, so there's plenty of space. Half of the room will be dedicated for lunch space for the high school boys, and high school girls will eat lunch at distance tables in the Beit Midrashah, and the hot lunch will be delivered to them. We're still investigating the issue of breakfast. I don't want to talk about that tonight. We can have an update next week on that issue. But what I'm presenting tonight is lunches, and we're leaving breakfast just to the side. Okay. Want to talk about essential services and people only. So one of the things that's really guiding us here is that we are only really focused on essential services in person. So anything we can do that's not essential, we are doing by Zoom. This meeting did not have to happen in person. We're doing it by Zoom. The meeting, other meetings we'll have at the beginning of the school year, we'll have by Zoom. If we're teacher meetings, we're generally having by Zoom with a couple of exceptions which have to be in person. So generally we are meeting distance unless it's essential. Education is essential to be done, in person, to be done safely. And so therefore that is being done in person. But all non-educational visits are postponed or need to be, or will be redesigned to be online. As well, we ask the parents to make appointments to come visit, and those visits should be really things that are essential. Of course, parents, you need to come to school. Your children are here, and it's your school as well. But we're asking parents and certainly guests to make an appointment to come visit, and let's handle these visitations in a way that's very, very safe. Of course, there'll be a process to come in with temperature taking, etc. Okay. Next, I want to talk about travel from outside of Memphis. Okay. So this has been a hot topic, and in fact, we put out our protocols on this issue, believe it, about a week and a half ago or so, and we wanted everyone to see those so that you could make your plans accordingly. Because of the proximity over duration, people sitting next to each other, some airlines are still having people sit next to each other. So travel by airplane constitutes a greater risk of contraction of the COVID than travel by car. And furthermore, travel from a situation of community spread or limited social distancing creates a risk of spread within Memphis. So if a student or faculty member travels outside of Memphis by airplane, he or she will not be permitted to attend school for 14 days upon arrival to Memphis. There is a way to have a test and to be able to present that test. That has to be done after 7 days of landing in Memphis. However, just please be advised that testing is very difficult in Memphis to get an appointment, to get results back in a timely manner. They oftentimes cost. And so testing is oftentimes not a really great strategy to rely on as an absolute possibility. As well, we've been told that there are limited supplies. So except in really necessity, one should not rely on testing. Okay, and then secondly, those who are traveling by car do not need to be quarantined or be tested. However, if the faculty member or student has recently been in a situation of real community spread and even limited social distancing, so that student or faculty may be excluded from the school for 14 days upon arrival, or again, that testing regimen we talked about. And that's again based on providing for the health and welfare for the school community in school. Finally, on this topic is our CYHSB dormitory and our GMSG dormitory. We do plan on opening both dormitories this coming year, please God. We have a number of students who are joining our dormitory coming back, and some joining for the first time. And we have students coming back also for our girls' dormitory as well. The dormitory students are all arriving by car, so they will not arrive by plane, and all of them also will be able to be tested when they come. The plan is for the dormitory students. Actually, I get this question a lot. Am I worried about the dormitory students being here? I think that they actually will be highly supervised and will be highly regulated in terms of what they're doing in a way that I wish was the case for our teenagers more generally. So I feel very confident and comfortable with the students who are coming. Again, they're coming by car. They'll be tested. They'll be supervised. They'll be monitored, and they'll be here on campus in a way that's safe. That group will be a family, and we're excited for our dormitory students to come back and come back to school in a safe way. Okay. I'll move on to foundation number 3. If I can get this thing to move forward. Catch up here. Okay, there we go. Okay. MHAFYOS will work to support each of our students educationally and socio-emotionally as needed. The support will include virtual education to those students who need to learn from home because of exposure to COVID-19 or because of concern for exposure. Okay, so MHAFYOS will endeavor to educate your child virtually. If you keep him or her at home, oh, excuse me, let me move forward. Okay, sorry. Okay, okay, so moment here. Okay, so, all right, so whether it's for health, safety, or other reasons. So again, we'll educate your child virtually if you keep him or her at home, whether it's for health, safety, or other reasons. And we'll support your child if he or she must stay home because of sickness or exposure, or as you determine what conditions you need before sending your child back to campus. Okay, so let's talk about testing positive for COVID-19 for a moment. Okay. So a student or staff member that tested positive for COVID-19 will be excluded from school and will be able to return to school based on what's called the symptom-based strategy. It's described by the CDC. So if at least 1 day has passed since recovery from the symptoms of COVID and at least 10 days have passed since symptoms first appeared, the student may return to school. It's a change from what was originally published because they changed their guidelines from 14 to 10 days. But anyway, and recovery from symptoms includes being fever-free without taking fever-reducing medications and improvement in all of the symptoms. Family doctor should write a letter saying that in his or her opinion it's safe for the student to return to school. If the student or faculty member was hospitalized, he or she may need to be excluded from school for a longer period of time. And depending on availability of testing within Memphis, we may additionally allow for a different kind of strategy, which is called a testing-based strategy. But for right now, we're being advised that that's not a good strategy for us to rely on. Exposure to a positive case. This is a member of the student's family test positive. So any student whose parent, sibling, or anyone else living in their home tests positive will not be able to attend school in person until a minimum of 14 days have passed symptom-free. Exposure to a positive case, and it's a member within the student's cohort if that cohort member tests positive. Okay, so as said before, the students are organized into groups. So we have 4th grade and we have 5th grade and 6th grade. In that sense, we have 5th and 6th grade are together because the 5th and 6th grade boys study together for part of the time. The 5th grade boys and girls study for part of the time. The 2nd grade, these are groups of students who are typically with each other, and they're called a cohort. So classes are organized to limit the number of students to which each student is exposed. So we're trying to keep the groups of students seeing the same groups of students daily and not intermingling very much, or if at all, if possible, with other groups of students. Okay. So if one member of a cohort tests positive, so the school will investigate the extent to which the student or faculty member was in contact with the other students and faculty. And depending on the extent of that contact, other students and faculty may be excluded for up to a minimum of 14 days. In general, the standard of contact that the school used, and this is based really on the CDC, is that for 4th grade and below, exposure to COVID-19 positive case within 6 feet for 14 consecutive minutes, when one or both of them is not wearing a mask, that would be considered to be a contact. And for 5th grade and up, so exposure to with a person who tested positive within 6 feet for 15 consecutive minutes, whether or not they were wearing a mask, it doesn't matter. So that's what's considered a contact. So if we have a high school student, for example, who tests positive, and another high school student we found was within the school, was within 6 feet of that other student who tested positive for 15 minutes or more, so that second student as a contact will need to also be excluded from the school for 14 days. So this is why it's extremely important for us to make sure that students are distanced during school so they can maintain that 6 feet boundary so that we don't need to exclude students for contact of cases of positive if they should happen. And not just for safety, but also for this element of exclusion. It's very important that students maintain the 6 feet distance. The type of contact tracing we're doing is within the school only. Of course, outside the school, a student may also contact other students, but our contact tracing, based on the advice we have from our professionals and from our medical professionals, is to do that contact tracing within the school itself. Communication. So if one member of a cohort tests positive, the parents of students within that cohort will be emailed immediately with the following message. A student within your child's cohort has tested positive for COVID-19. The message will detail any specific instructions and guidance based on the situation, and teachers of the cohort will also be notified. Soon after that message is sent, we'll send a similar message to the entire parent body and faculty that someone has tested positive within the school community. In accordance with applicable halachic, legal, and ethical standards, the school will cooperate with local, state, and federal government bodies, and in the interest of public health, we will, as appropriate, release the names of positive tests and contacts. I want to talk about virtual instruction. So for students who stay at home, again, either because they've been exposed or because they're just acting preventatively. So in the upper grades, these students will be able to connect by Zoom to each class that they have. They'll follow their schedule. They'll be able on the Zoom to see to hear what's going on, to see the teacher when the teacher's at the podium, and be able to clearly see the whiteboard. Teachers will also be able to engage these students as well. In the lower grades, it won't be the same because of just the way the classes are organized and the way the rooms are organized, but students will be able to listen in on the class. We'll see the front of the class. Teachers and administrators will also additionally support these students by offering handouts, supplemental material, as well as offering discussions and conferencing with the students individually. We have been working to date with families on a case-by-case basis to support students who are in this category. Finally, in this area, I want to talk about social emotional health. Socio-emotional health, okay? And I want to state at the outset of talking about this, I know a lot of this has been kind of dry, but I want to kind of speak to the camera for a moment. This is a very fearful moment for many members of our school community. It's a fearful time. It's a time ridden with anxiety. It's a time ridden with difficulty, challenge, some more than others, some way more than others. But it's striking our students, it's striking our families, it's striking our faculty members in even very, very different kinds of ways. Our school-based counselor, Miss Vanessa Caradulu, participated in a lengthy training session this summer on mental health in the age of COVID. She'll be conducting a training for our teachers next week during our teacher training week. She'll be working with our students and with our parents subsequently as we begin and continue into the school year. We are exploring other ways additionally of supporting our students, including other special professional training for teachers and for parents, as well as using our administrators and teachers to specifically check in on students one by one. This is very important. It really harks back to what I said before about us acting as a community in a way that's supportive. It's important for us to, going back to each one doing our part, of respecting each other's boundaries, respecting each other for what we need. We can't look into other people's hearts and in other people's souls and see what they need or how they're potentially suffering from the situation, whether it's health-wise, whether it's financial, whether it's anxiety, whether it's stress. We don't know. And so it's really, really essential that we support each other during this time, again, practically by masking and distancing, but also by offering comfort and support to each other as friends, and for the school to be able to do this as professionals in our school capacity. Okay, I want to talk now about next steps. I want to invite you that if you have any personal questions or personal issues you'd like to talk with me about, I've set up a Calendly. If you're unfamiliar with Calendly, Calendly is a program where you can click this link here. Jessica's going to put it in the chat, and you click in this link, and you can just set up a time. I've set out some times in the next few days for 30-minute sessions, many sessions. If we need more, I'll add more. These are sessions you can just sign up. It's by Zoom, and we'll have 30 minutes together. We can talk about whatever you want. You want to talk about COVID, great. You want to talk about my Seahawks, we could talk about that. Whatever you want, we could talk about. And I really don't know much about the Seahawks anymore, but we could talk about whatever's on your minds. And it's a time for us to connect. And I'm happy to review what we've talked about tonight, or talk about any specific issues that you may have personally. There will be a high school parents meeting Monday night, August 10th, and information is forthcoming. There'll be a high school students meeting also to follow. We need those specific meetings because there are a lot of moving parts in the high school, both for the parents and the students, that are specific to the high school that they need a special meeting on. So a lot of what we talked about tonight is related to the entire school, but high school needs a special training. And then I invite you, if you have any questions now, we've been talking for 45 minutes. And if you have any questions now, I ask you to please ask. As I said, please, if you would forward them to Jessica, I'll go through the questions. I'll stay as long as there are people on, and we'll get started. Okay. So let me go here. Okay, question number 1. Okay, what if students are not cooperating? Okay, so I mentioned before that the basketball shooting around, for example, is something where I said that if students are cooperating with the protocols, then we'll allow things like shooting baskets, things like that. What if they're not? Okay, so I want to talk to that for a second. Okay, I don't know how this may play. I mean, I think there are a million permutations that this may play out in. But my point over here is to say is that we're watching the environment constantly and we're reevaluating. So I don't know how this will play out exactly, but if we find that students are taking up a ball instead of shooting around, they are just playing one-on-one and they're banging and they're banging into each other, breathing all over each other. So then we're going to have to put in protocols or put in new standards accordingly. So what I mean over here, cooperation is that we expect these protocols. We're expecting the behavior according to the protocols. We believe that if the protocols are put in place based on the advice we've received from the medical advisors who we've worked with, we believe that these are very strong protocols and will very strongly support and protect the health of the people who are here. But at the same time, if the environment is different than what we imagine, we will need to revisit the protocols and put in new protocols to act accordingly. What is the threshold for kids not distancing or wearing masks in school? What is the threshold of the school? Okay, let's answer that question first. Okay, so again, 6 feet is the basis for distancing, and wearing masks is universal. We understand that students who are very, very young, 3-year-old and 4-year-old, there's going to be a process to get used to wearing the mask. We understand that's a process, and we're going to work with the students to get them used to wearing masks if they're not used to it already. Certainly parents, we would hope, will also help work with their kids now to get them used to wearing masks, and so they get used to that. But as we get older, this is the students, they just need to wear them, and we will work with them to give them breaks that are supervised breaks, so they can take their mask off in a safe place, distance, in a safe area. But those students are going to need to wear their masks, and it's not a choice. This is a requirement that we have, is a basis for our protocols, and this is the best way we know to keep our community safe within the school. What is the threshold if the school knows the kids are not distancing and wearing masks outside of school? That's a great question, and I don't have an exact metric for that, but I can tell you based on what we started at the beginning of the meeting. What happened over this last weekend puts into question, calls to question whether we can open safely, and it does open the question in my mind whether that initial event by itself is enough that it's already caused potentially spread, and or whether that's the type of behavior that's going to go on outside of school. Then we need to consider whether our protocols are enough to guarantee. We can't guarantee safety, but to help mitigate enough risk for us to be in school. Question 2, temperature. Next question. There's another one. Next question. Temperature of guests was discussed. What about kids? Same thing. Every kid that comes in, if they have a temperature of 100 or greater, so If it's close to 100, I mean, the temperature may be very hot outside, so we may ask them to sit down in an isolated place for a few minutes, recheck them, make sure that this in fact is a fever and it's not just a misreading. But it's anyone who comes into the building, takes their temperature 100 or greater, they need to go home. Okay, let's continue. Next question. Oh boy. Okay, here we go. Okay. Originally, we had said that it would be very difficult to enforce masks with the little ones. How do we envision doing that now that masks are required? So I think this is referring to maybe when we had our meeting a number of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, 5 weeks ago. Maybe that's what this is in reference to, that we talked about masks not being required for the littlest ones. Yes, so that's changed, and we feel that this is a requirement in order for us to feel that there's enough protection within the environment. As I said before, we do understand this will be a process, but we think they can get there. Based on what we're hearing from other schools, from other camps. Camp Shemesh, we didn't have that experience. We used the old protocols. It was just based on younger kids, and so we felt, based on our guidance, that was the best guidance we were getting. But now, given the school environment, this is better guidance, and we'll work there. We'll work to get with them to get to that standard. Okay, next. Next was shared the calendar, so please make sure to see that. Let's keep going. Someone said hi. Hi, thank you so much. Okay, next. In the event a teacher tests positive, what happens to the class? Dun, dun, dun. Okay, that's a great question. So we have been working, part of our plans have been to put together teachers who are substitute teachers who can come in, who are capable of being within the class, being here, being available to be here. But it may be a combination of that and teachers teaching potentially from their home. So we'll have both those combination within those two combination plus, it could be that we need to retool the schedule on some level if things become too dramatic in terms of number of teachers out. But we'll take that as it comes. But the two main things we have for this are substitute teachers, which we've lined up or lining up, and teachers teaching from Zoom if they're capable of doing so. Okay. If one of your children, oh boy, why can't I get to go? Let's try this. Okay. If one of your children wakes up with a fever or a sore throat, do all the kids have to stay home? What about allergies? Okay, so the basic standard for this is that if someone within a family has an unexplained fever, meaning to say it's a fever that's just cropped up. Okay, I don't know, drawing, maybe it's me, I don't know. Okay, so all the siblings stay home. All the siblings stay home. That's because we don't know what the cause is of the fever. However, if it is explainable, so for example, let's say we had a case where one of the siblings got a shot, and one of the side effects of the shot is to have a fever. So then we don't assume that the fever is related to COVID. We assume the fever is explainable. It's explained by the event that just happened, and the siblings can come. So this is going to require some consultation over here, potential consultation with the doctor. But the general standard is that unexplained fever or unexplained big symptoms like that will require all the siblings to be excluded until we can figure out what's going on. Okay, what about teachers? Some teachers teach multiple cohorts of grades. What happens if they suspect COVID or test positive? Okay. So going back to what we talked about cohorts, the basic issue of a contact, the definition of a contact is being within 6 feet for 15 minutes. Depending on the age, it depends on a mask or not with a mask. So for teachers, our teachers and our students will generally be distanced at a distance of 6 feet. It's true that the teacher may come over and work with the student, maybe point to something on the desk, maybe tell the student something like that. However, that's not going to be for 15 minutes. Our teachers themselves will be distancing as well as the students. So even if a teacher tests positive for COVID and teaches multiple grades, again, we'll use the same test we talked about before. which is 6 feet distance, less than that, for 15 minutes. What is the rule if one kid in a family is sick, not tested positive, just has symptoms like a fever, do siblings have to stay home? I answered that question. The answer is yes. Also, what happens when people aren't truthful about the COVID questions? Please be truthful. This can be an issue of life and death for certain people. And it may be life and death for your own child, but that's not the issue. This is a community we're in. This is a question of suffix sakana, of potential danger to life. It's a question of the spread within our community. It's a question of potentially not being able to keep the school open. It's a question of undermining your own credibility and your children's credibility. And I think it's a matter of also inculcating just truthfulness in our children. What message are we telling children if they know they took Tylenol in the morning and they're asked a question in front of you're asked a question in front of them? Do you have a fever? Did you take Tylenol? And you answer no. What are you teaching your kids? So I know things are hard, and I know in the short term these are very high stakes in terms of the decision we have to make of keeping kids home. But the other side of the stakes are important too. Please be truthful. Let's please have a community where we can rely on each other, we can trust each other, we can respect each other on that basis, and just please be truthful. I don't have a better answer than that. We don't have no one's taking truth serum around here. So please be truthful, and so we can all rely on each other. How will the school require masks wearing? How will the school require mask wearing? What response will the school make to students or parents not wear a mask? I assume this means within the school, students have to wear masks. That's the bottom line. So student can't wear a mask. I guess we'll have a discussion with the student, maybe potentially with with his or her parents. But bottom line is the student needs to wear the mask. If they can't wear a mask, the older students particularly, if they can't wear a mask, then they will not be able to be within this environment. So we expect students to wear masks. As I said before, for younger kids, we do have not only do we have the ability to be a little more light-handed or gentle-handed with this, because we know that the kids who are youngest do not have the ability to spread as well as adults. And so therefore, we will work with them over time to quickly get them acclimated to wearing masks. Will every class be live recorded if students need to opt to stay home for health reasons? I think the answer to that question is yes. We have the capacity for that. We can live record classes. Okay. I mean to say by Zoom. So while we're Zooming, so we can push record on the Zoom button. Okay. How is the school handling supplies drop off this year? I'd like to hold that question off. I just really kind of focus on COVID questions here. Maybe I can take it at the end. And I'm sorry. It's a question really. It's a question really in response, more general. I'll tell you what. I think I'd rather turn this question over to the principals. I'm not going to turn it over right now. What I'll do is I will make sure that we can send out an email, just making sure it's very clear what our procedures are going to be for handling supplies drop off for the year. Not sure, let me just read this first. It says, not sure if it's a public question. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one out. Okay. Next. I did answer that. Aren't kids exposed to teachers in the cohort? I talked about that question. Again, that goes back to the issue of maintaining a distance of 6 feet for 15 minutes. And so to the extent that everyone is remaining 6 feet distanced for 15 minutes, so the issue of cohorting, again, we'll keep everyone together and we'll keep people, in a room that is that the amount of space to walk around is sufficient, but also students who are not within or faculty members who are not within those 6 feet for 15 minutes, so they will not need to be excluded. Will there be any point that the school will require an actual COVID test to assure the lack of the virus if someone is not feeling well, or if they are just asking to stay away until the fever subsides. Okay, so again, will there be any point that the school will require an actual COVID test to assure the lack of the virus if someone is not feeling well? They're just being asked to stay away until the fever subsides. Okay, so that's a great question. That's a great question. Okay, I'm gonna put this down. This is something I need to get a little consultation on. I would say that certainly, as we talked about before, until we can resolve what the fever is about. So insofar as there are fever or other symptoms that are COVID-like, then we will treat that like COVID. Okay, but whether we will go to a person and say you must take a COVID test, which is what this question's asking, I'd like to get some more guidance on that question. Okay. How will the playground be cleaned between classes for recess? Okay, it's a good question. So again, just going back to recess protocols in general, which is not this question, but the recess themselves will be supervised and will be distanced, and also will be done in staggered, so that you'll have maybe one group over here and one group on the field, or one group at 10:15 and another group at 10:30, and so the recess will be done in a way that's also done in groups. Regarding the playground, so we are still getting guidance on this issue. We want the kids to be able to play on the playground. At the same time, we know we need to clean the playground as well. So we've been going back and forth on this issue. It could be that we'll limit the playground to the youngest kids, one possibility, or we may be able to clean it in the morning, so that between groups it's clean. So this is something that we are still, but we'll be sensitive to this issue regarding what kids will be able to do. Whoa, kind of went down a little bit. Okay, next question. Will all faculty be required to stay home? Should they have a faculty member with an unexplained fever? Yes. Okay. All right. How are we going to teach these procedures to the kids? Okay. For the high school, so that's what I was talking before about having a night where we have a meeting with the kids. So in that meeting, we'll discuss the protocols, what it's like to walk in, how you walk in, where you go, what you do in a very specific kind of a way. I think that there is a sensitivity here, and we're balancing really two feelings, and we're not always going to get it right. But I will tell you that we're all trying to be sensitive to two feelings. On the one hand, we're being sensitive to the feeling of the gravity of the situation and how serious we need to take it. And at the same time, we're trying not to unduly make people scared. I know that in this presentation, I was trying to balance those two considerations. I actually ran this presentation by a couple people asking for their sensitivity to whether I hit that mark. I don't know whether I did or not, but I certainly am trying to be conscious of the balance between seriousness on the one hand and gravity of the situation, and on the other hand, the fact that people are fearful and worried, and that we need to make sure we don't panic people needlessly. So we are going to show kids, we're going to show them the mask, we are going to show them how we distance, we're going to show them the rooms, we're going to demonstrate, we're going to talk to the issues, we'll talk to it again, we'll talk to it again, we'll talk to it again. We'll do teaching, and the teaching is going to be done in smaller groups. At high school will be done generally, but we'll do it again in smaller groups so that people have an opportunity for questions and understanding. Okay, is there any uniform requirements for the mask, color, words, pattern? Okay. We have not established any uniform requirements other than double layers. I mentioned before, a double layer, or something similar in terms of its ability to block, block the airflow, or something similar in terms of plastic as well, or something ASTM 3 standard. We are getting MHA masks, and maybe we'll move to those. We got to see whether those are going to fit and everything like that. Certainly ones that are, please keep them appropriate and keep them ones you want to show around the school. And I guess, at this point, we probably need to know pretty quickly if there's going to be any kind of uniform requirements. We'll put those out. We'll put those out in the next couple of days. couple of days. But at this point, it's just we've only talked about the nature of the masks, not the look of the masks. Okay, next. Okay, all right. This is a specific question about children with asthma, children with allergies. I really would ask any parents to alert us. I know you put it on the medical form. Please talk to us about asthma, allergies. Please call your principal directly. And if you've been experiencing issues regarding wearing a mask, certainly that's something we need to know now sooner rather than later. We'll need to get some sort of medical dispensation depending on the age. And we also will, of course, if there are unexplained symptoms, we said before that we will need to have them explained before student and siblings can come back. But if a student has asthma or allergies, that we'll need to consult, or you'll need to consult, and we'll need to have some sort of record of a discussion with a medical professional regarding those symptoms being tied to some pre-existing condition as opposed to COVID. Okay. All right. That is the end of the questions. It's only been an hour. I would welcome you, please, to please, if you want to talk, I would really welcome. I don't want to be alone during those 3 mornings, so I really welcome meetings with you. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to talk to both parents. I'd love to talk to you and your kids. I'd love to hear what's going on. If those times don't work for you, please, email me. We could try to set up a mutually agreeable time. But I'd love to visit with you during the next couple days to hear any questions you have or just to touch base. I thank you for coming tonight. Please God, we have a very safe opening of school, and we'll continue to all be safe, Bezrat Hashem, please God. And I wish you a good evening and continued safety and good health. Good night. Good evening.